We were born to run. To some of us though, that statement might feel a little far from the truth, as running doesn't come naturally to all of us. However, it's something we were never actually taught. So whether you're completely new to running or maybe you're a runner who's not happy with their gait, today I'm going to be taking it back to basics and revisiting how to actually run. It's usually fairly obvious to spot a poor running gait and what is going wrong, but when it comes to good runners, it's much harder to see exactly what they are doing. So today I'm going to be breaking down the movement patterns of the running gait and explaining exactly how to perform them correctly, as well as giving you some tips to get going. Before we actually start moving, we need to address how you stand, as your posture will carry over onto your running. And you might have flashbacks from school of being told to stand upright. Well, obviously running is a fluid movement, but still having your head held high and your shoulders nice and open, your tummy tucked in and your hips facing forwards is going to help. So you want to picture having a line that dissects your body. It goes up from your feet, so through your ankles, your knees, up through your hips, dissecting your shoulders and then your ears. And you want to maintain that line when you start running, although you're going to have a slight forward tilt, so the line is basically coming up at a forward angle from the ground. Let's now address the specific parts of your body and how they should move. So we're going to start off with the feet and the ankles. When you're walking, you land with a heel strike with your leg out in front of you and your leg nice and straight. But as soon as you start running, the force that's going through your bones and your joints is greatly increased. So you do want to make sure you've got a slight soft knee, so it's a very slight bend in it, and making sure it's not fully extended. And as to where your foot lands on the ground, well, that is eternally open to debate. And it's something that I suggest you experiment with yourself. But having a mid-foot foot plant actually does help with some shock absorption, and it'll also help encourage you to have a better body position. But it goes hand in hand, because as you start running and you start to implement that forward tilt we've already talked about, you'll find it more easy to land with a mid-foot strike as well. Sticking with your feet, you also need to address where your foot lands in relation to your body, and it's really common to see people overstriding, so basically landing on their heel with their foot way out in front, so a little bit like the walking action. But when it comes to running, this is pretty much acting like a brake, because you're putting your foot down out in front of you and then having to move your body over it, and it's also really jarring on the body. So ideally you want your foot to be landing underneath your body whilst it's already started to move backwards. And a good drill to just get awareness of your foot landing underneath your body is simply running on the spot. There are a couple of old school on-the-spot drills which will really help with the points that we've been covering. So first of all, high knees. I expect most of you understand what I mean by this one, but you are simply jogging on the spot. You're going to start off by just bringing your knees halfway up to hip height and really focusing on landing on your midfoot and keeping that time on the ground really short. So short contact time and nice and springy off the ground. Once you've mastered that, then try to bring it up to full hip height. So basically you're getting your knees up to 90 degrees or your hips up to 90-degree angle, and then take plenty of rest. Just try and do this for 10 to 15 seconds, because if you're doing it well, it will be hard. And then we need to look at the other end of your running stride, so your bottom activation and with some butt kicks. So you're simply going to place your hands behind your bottom, and you're going to start off by trying to flick your heels up towards your hands, just sort of halfway to start with. And this one, you really need to focus on keeping a good posture, because it's quite easy to start to lean forwards, but as a result, it will be quite easy to naturally land on your midfoot or even your forefoot, and then progress this to actually touching your hands with your heels. And once you've got these mastered, really concentrate on keeping posture throughout and staying nice and upright, because it is easy to cheat, but obviously that's going to then, not get the point of the drill. And then finally, once you're ready, you can start to progress this to moving forward, so covering a distance of say 15 to 20 meters, and then just jog back for recovery. A common cue from running coaches is to hear them say, run tall. Well, it acts in the same way as standing tall. So you put your shoulders back and you automatically tuck your tummy in. And I bet you've done that without even realizing. And these cues are great for making you look good when you're standing and running. But we're not focusing on that today. We want you to be running more easily. And it will have a knock-on effect, because tucking your tummy in is naturally going to rotate your pelvis slightly posteriorly. So basically bringing your hips up towards your chest. And that's going to then make it much easier to lift your knees when you're running. Your hips are essential for all of your running propulsion, and we talked about the front of the hips, so the knee drive coming forwards, but we also need to look at the posterior chain, so what happens at the back. And when you're running, you need to have good extension in your leg as your body moves over your foot, and if that's restricted, then you're going to be restricting your stride length. So you need to make sure you've got strong glutes that are firing, because that's the powerhouse, your bottom muscles, but also that your hips aren't too tight so that you can get that full running propulsion from each stride. Moving up to your shoulders, ideally you want these to remain as relaxed as possible, because if they come too tense or bunched up around your ears, then you're going to find it much harder to breathe, but also just restricting your overall movement. And any movement that comes at the shoulders should be a result of your arms moving forwards, not as a result of your shoulders actually forcing that movement. Your arms are actually there to help you run more easily. So if you think about the forwards and backwards motion of your arms actually driving and propelling you forwards, and there's actually a diagonal link from the opposite shoulder and arm through to the opposite hip, so connected through your torso. And because of this, yes, your shoulders are working, but you still need to keep them nice and relaxed. And you want to have a bit of a gentle bend at your elbows, so keeping them in close to your torso. And when it comes to your hands, they need to be relaxed as well. So you don't want them super clenched, you don't want them poker straight, but just somewhere in the middle in a relaxed sort of finger bend. In this relaxed position, you want your arms to solely be moving forwards and backwards, keeping them close to your torso, as any movement that goes across your body is just going to be counterproductive, and you'll have to correct that with your legs. So you can actually practice this on the spot now. So you might sound silly, but if you just stand still and you have your arms and you're just simply going to pump them forwards and backwards, concentrating on keeping your shoulders relaxed. You can even do it in front of the mirror. And then if you take one foot in front of the other, as though you're in a partial running stance, and practice it again for 10 arm pumps, and then swap onto the other side for another 10. And obviously when you're actually running, you're not going to have to physically think about your arms so much, because they will move more naturally with the running gait. But to just prove how much your arms do assist your running, I want you to have a little go at going out for a run and sticking your hands to your thighs, so running with your arms by your side, a little bit like a penguin, and then go back to normal running, and you'll really feel the benefit of what your arms do. Last but no means least is your head, and with it being such a heavy structure, its position can have a serious knock-on effect on your running. And remember that line I talked about at the beginning, your head needs to remain in line with the rest of your body, because if it's too far forwards or it's looking down, then you'll find it really hard to lift your knees up at the front of your running gait. If it's the opposite and you find it's too far back, then it's going to cause you to heel strike and overstride. So also too much excessive movement, you really want to try to reduce, or keeping it on one side, because anything you're doing with your head, your body's just going to have to compensate, and it'll end up having to work harder. So a good way to get your head in the right position is to, instead of thinking about your head, think about your eye line. So make sure you're looking nice and far ahead, as that will naturally keep your shoulders back, and it will help you keep your hips up as well. I can't believe I've actually got this far and not addressed breathing, but it is quite hard to have it as a separate section, as it's obviously involved in every movement of running, and if you're getting it wrong, then it can have a negative effect on your run. Yes, it sounds simple. We all know how to breathe, and after all, we have got this far, but you might not actually be breathing correctly for your running, and signs could be having really tense shoulders or seeing tension in your face and your neck. And when you are breathing, you need to utilize your full lung capacity for running. So that means breathing more than purely from your rib cage. So let's have a look at where you're at the moment. So for this, you need to just take a lie down a moment and just breathe normally whilst placing your hand on your belly. If your hand isn't moving, then it indicates you're only doing shallow breaths. So try to focus on filling all of your lungs with air right to the bottom of them, and this will see your belly move outwards or upwards underneath your hand on the in-breath, and then as you breathe out, your hand should fall away. Just have a feel and get used to doing this whilst you're lying still, and then take it up to standing, and again place your hand on your belly to get the feel. And you might find that actually doing some simple breathing exercises before running will help to remind you to stay relaxed, but also to fully utilize that lung capacity. And finding the correct footwear is important when running, especially if you're looking at altering your gait. And for this, I would recommend heading to a specialist running store so they can ensure you've got a shoe that suits your running style but also fits properly. And then finally, a bit of strengthening. You need to make sure you really work on strengthening your core and the muscles around your hips, as that enables you to keep that good posture we've talked about for far longer, which in turn makes running much easier and makes you more efficient.